a lot of respect for him. So if he's excited for this new journey, I'm excited for him.
NBA players have finally weighed in on the trade that sent Trae Young to the Washington Wizards, reshaping the landscape of both franchises. What the public often frames as drama, rivalry, or a win-or-lose moment turns out to be far more nuanced. Behind social media posts, interviews, and highlight reels lies a story about locker room dynamics, team strategy, and professional perspective. And the players' reactions reveal how insiders understand the trade in ways fans rarely see. Immediate player reactions. The announcement of Trae Young's recent trade sent immediate ripples throughout the NBA. Teammates, peers, and former players responded on social media, interviews, and podcasts, expressing a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and cautious optimism. Atlanta players framed the move as a signal of faith in Young's ability to lead the franchise, emphasizing that the organization was committing to him as a cornerstone. In contrast, the acquiring team's affiliates highlighted the significance of the trade as a franchise-defining decision, praising Young's potential to make an immediate impact. Former players often approach the trade analytically, noting the structural implications for rotations, coaching strategies, and team chemistry, rather than framing the transaction as a win or loss. This split between emotional reactions and analytical assessment demonstrates a recurring pattern. Professional insiders view trades less as personal narratives and more as operational shifts.
Wish him the best, but yeah, I mean, Trae's been one of my guys, on this team, and someone that really, took me under his wing.
The reactions also illustrate how trades influence perception of opportunity and responsibility. Players recognize that roster changes, coaching adjustments, and strategic realignment will determine the pace of development for both the incoming and remaining athletes. Social media amplified these reactions, giving fans a sense of drama, yet inside the league, commentary was grounded in evaluating fit, style, and long-term potential. In this sense, immediate responses offer insight into professional priorities, how a player's environment, responsibilities, and peer expectations influence growth and outcomes. These initial observations close the loop on first impressions but raise stakes. While immediate reactions highlight excitement and concern, they don't fully account for the structural variables that will shape performance over multiple seasons. Understanding how professionals assess trades sets up the next question. When peers and analysts start comparing Trae Young to other stars, how much of that debate reflects talent and how much reflects context? Comparisons between Trae Young and Luka Doncic. The recent trade immediately sparked comparisons between Trae Young and other young stars, both in the media and among NBA players. Analysts debated who won the trade based on statistics, leadership qualities, and immediate franchise impact. Inside the league, players emphasized context over raw numbers. Young entered a new organization that will determine his role, responsibilities, and system fit, contrasting with stars who entered fully consolidated teams. While Young's talent is elite, the structural differences in team stability and coaching philosophy significantly influence perception. Peers noted that stability amplifies a player's output in measurable ways, while volatility can obscure a star's true value.
There's a little bit of motivation there. I have a lot of different types of motivation. Obviously, that's a little bit of it.
Beyond the numbers, players considered influence on teammates, adaptability to schemes, and ability to dictate outcomes under pressure. Young's environment will test his leadership and consistency as he integrates into a new roster with evolving expectations. These factors demonstrate why comparisons in isolation can be misleading. They fail to account for organizational alignment, role security, and systemic support. Players observing the trade recognize that while talent sets ceilings, environment determines how quickly and visibly a player reaches them. Closing this analysis, the debate highlights a critical point. Performance cannot be separated from the ecosystem in which a player operates. Comparing stars without considering context risks misreading potential. With this understanding, attention shifts from individual talent to team dynamics, which directly influence player development and perception, an essential lens for evaluating how Trae Young will fit into his new team system. Once the talent versus context debate is established, the analysis moves from abstract comparison to lived reality inside the locker room. How those structural differences translate into chemistry, roles, and daily adjustments becomes the next proving ground, where perception is shaped not by comparison, but by cohesion. Impact on team dynamics. Trae Young's trade reshaped his new team's locker room from the moment it was announced. A ball-dominant point guard requires adjustments in spacing, rotations, and defensive assignments. Veteran teammates noted the challenge of recalibrating offensive schemes to fit Young's style while maintaining team cohesion. Coaches faced the task of balancing his high-usage role with preserving rhythm for supporting players. Peers across the league recognize that these factors matter as much as talent in determining both short-term outcomes and long-term development.
I'm more happy about the team that we got going into the season. For me, I'm blessed, bro. Like I wasn't stressing about anything. If something happened, it happened. If it didn't, I mean, I still got, time and.
Even minor changes in chemistry or leadership clarity can ripple through rotations, affecting performance and perception in ways that statistics alone do not capture. The trade also highlighted how fluid team identity affects evaluation. The roster flexibility allows experimentation with lineups and offensive combinations, creating opportunities but also periods of instability. Players in similar situations emphasize that this environment tests leadership, adaptability, and resilience. High-level NBA talent does not exist in a vacuum. The surrounding system can amplify strengths or expose weaknesses. Observing these dynamics provides insight into how performance is intertwined with organizational decisions. The key takeaway is that locker room adaptation lays the foundation for assessing leadership and influence. Young's ability to integrate with teammates, establish trust, and shape team identity became central to his perceived value. This raises the question, how will his responsibilities and visibility in the new system define his role compared to other young stars? So that's the impact of locker room chemistry and systemic adjustment on Trae Young's value. But it means leadership isn't just earned through production, it's tested by instability and shared authority. And it raises a bigger question. How does Trae define control, influence, and accountability within that environment? So let's go to leadership and player roles. Leadership and player roles. Trae Young's trade thrust him into a leadership position under unique circumstances. Unlike stars entering a fully consolidated system, Young faces a dynamic roster with shared responsibilities and evolving coaching philosophies. Leadership in the NBA is situational. It requires consistent performance, influence over teammates, and alignment with organizational goals. Peers noted that Young's authority will depend on context. His ability to assert control is shaped by roster turnover, rotations, and role clarity.
I'm excited about this team, this group, and so for me, the leadership part is just taking it one day at a time. Obviously, we have a lot of new pieces and new guys on our team that can bring a different.
NBA insiders emphasize that leadership is not solely about vocal presence or on-court production. It involves shaping team culture, earning trust, and making decisions under pressure. Young's environment demands that he negotiate these responsibilities while simultaneously delivering high-level performance, creating a dual challenge, developing as a leader while navigating systemic flux. Observers recognize that this combination tests resilience and strategic awareness, traits critical for long-term impact. This analysis demonstrates that player leadership cannot be fully evaluated without understanding context. How a player influences teammates, enforces standards, and responds to uncertainty directly impacts performance and perception. Establishing this foundation closes the chapter on leadership challenges while opening the next layer, the future playoff implications of Trae Young's role, where situational authority, system fit, and performance under pressure converge to determine postseason success. So that's how leadership and postseason performance intersect to define Trae Young's real value. But it means playoff outcomes alone won't settle the debate. How those performances are interpreted matters just as much, and it raises a bigger question. How do fan narratives and player commentary reshape perception of Trae's role beyond what actually happens on the floor? Future playoff implications. Trae Young's trade immediately raised questions about his new team's postseason trajectory. NBA players and analysts examined how his presence would affect rotations, offensive schemes, and defensive assignments, particularly in high-pressure playoff scenarios. Integrating a high-usage point guard requires careful coordination across lineups, spacing, and pick-and-roll execution.
You handle your shots, everything. You just get more comfortable in your game and then be ready when you come back in the season.
Success in the regular season doesn't always translate to the playoffs, where adjustments are quicker, defenses tighter, and coaching strategies more deliberate. Observers noted that Young's ability to perform under heightened scrutiny will define both team outcomes and his reputation as a franchise leader. Players recognized that Young's arrival offered both opportunity and risk. While his offensive load could elevate the team into serious contention, it also places additional pressure on teammates to adapt quickly. Veteran players emphasize that teams with a single dominant creator often see overall effectiveness fluctuate based on opponent strategy and role player buy-in. So that's how playoff performance sets the on-court stakes for Trae Young's evaluation. But it means those results are filtered through narratives that can amplify or distort what actually happened. And it raises a bigger question: how do fans, media, and players collectively shape the story of Trae's role? So let's go to fan and player narratives. Fan and player narratives. Beyond the court, Trae Young's trade sparked extensive discussion among fans and players alike, shaping a narrative that blends loyalty, expectation, and media framing. Social media amplified polarized opinions. Some hailed the Hawks for securing a franchise point guard, while others questioned whether he could carry a team in the playoffs. Players, however, offered a more nuanced perspective, emphasizing situational factors like roster cohesion, coaching style, and system fit. For insiders, narrative oversimplifications, who won or lost, rarely reflect the complexities they see firsthand.
And he let us know that it was always going to be there for us, and it was like, no matter what, it was going to be happy to see us succeed and just see us playing.
Fans often anchor their evaluations in comparison, creating a sense of rivalry that extends beyond the court. Media outlets reinforce these narratives, framing outcomes as binaries and focusing on highlight moments. Peers observe that such simplifications obscure structural truths. Young's development, leadership evolution, and impact on team dynamics are deeply tied to context, yet public discourse often measures him against other stars without accounting for system variables. Recognizing the divide between narrative and reality clarifies how external pressure intersects with professional performance. Fans' interpretations can influence morale and expectations, but the league's insiders focus on fit, adaptability, and opportunity. Closing this chapter, the focus now shifts to long-term implications. How does this trade shape Trae Young's career trajectory, both in the eyes of peers and in his lasting legacy across the league? So that's the gap between narrative and reality, how Trae Young is talked about versus how he's evaluated inside the league. But it means those perceptions don't just shape reputation in the moment. They compound over time and influence opportunity, pressure, and legacy. And it raises a bigger question: how does this trade ultimately shape Trae Young's long-term career arc? Long-term career trajectory. Trae Young's trade set the stage for an evolving career arc defined by opportunity, responsibility, and organizational alignment. NBA players note that career trajectory is shaped as much by context as by talent. Roster construction, coaching philosophies, and system stability directly influence development. In Atlanta, Young assumed a high-usage role under conditions of constant change, testing resilience, adaptability, and decision-making. Peers emphasize that navigating these circumstances successfully can accelerate growth and elevate a player's long-term value both on the court and in endorsement potential.
Stick to my roots, stick to what I've been taught, even just from my peers that didn't even know that they was teaching me at the time, just from growing up and being around NBA guys. And
Evaluating trajectory also requires understanding comparative benchmarks. Players drafted alongside Young, like Luka Doncic, offer a point of contrast, but the league stresses that raw talent is inseparable from opportunity. Organizational clarity, leadership responsibilities, and team stability can either amplify or suppress a player's impact. Young's performance under pressure, coupled with his ability to guide Atlanta through playoff contention, will influence how peers, analysts, and fans measure his career. This perspective closes the loop on performance evaluation while raising broader stakes. The trade was never just about immediate output, but about positioning Young for sustained influence and success. Understanding this trajectory reframes the narrative. Legacy will be shaped less by comparisons in the moment and more by alignment with organizational strategy, adaptability under pressure, and cumulative achievement over time. The story of Trae Young's trade, from locker room reaction to long-term trajectory, is ultimately a study in how context and opportunity define professional basketball careers. NBA players see this trade very differently than fans do. For them, it's about fit, roles, and long-term impact, not headlines. And how Trae and the Wizards evolve next may matter more than the trade itself. Click here on the cards to watch more.